Great.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony so far. This has been a fantastic hearing, just really appreciate all the work that you've put into it. Couldn't agree more with the last topic you're just talking about, which is we need to instill a culture of lifelong learning, and our education system needs to reflect the realities of the 21st century economy where, forget jobs, we're popping in and out of industries multiple times over the course of our career. So I fully agree with that. If I could, to start, Dr. McNutt, I want to build on Mr. Waltz's question. I think you framed the problem incredibly well in terms of, what's pushing women out of STEM fields. And then he asked the question when he didn't have time, but could you expand on what you think this committee could do to support women in STEM education and in industry generally?
Right. So the report makes the point that changes need to happen. This is the National Academy's report on sexual harassment for women in the science, engineering, and medicine fields, that main changes need to come from changing the culture. We have to change the culture of our institutions, and changing the culture within our laboratories, our federal laboratories, changing the culture within our funding agencies, changing the culture within our universities. All of these systems need to have a top-down culture that starts with statements like sexual harassment, gender harassment will not be tolerated. I remember many years ago, the federal government, through OSTP, but I think well with the support of Congress, made scientific integrity a priority. I think that the government should make the banishment of sexual harassment a priority as well, and make every single agency come up with a plan for how they are going to change their culture to make sure it doesn't happen. And have your funding that you give to them contingent on having that plan.
Thank you. And then switching back to education, specifically in communities not on the coast, right? So I come from Northeast Ohio, and we have a pretty big skills gap when it comes to STEM. According to a recent estimate provided by McKinsey & Company, Northeast Ohio has the potential to receive an economic impact of between 3.5 and 10.1 billion annually by year 2025 through the implementation of things like Internet of Things, various manufacturing application segments. What we lack is a workforce that has the tools to take full advantage of these opportunities. So what would you say, and anybody can answer this, would be the right way that we should be thinking about this in Northeast Ohio as we train up our workforce for the 21st century? Dr. Gallagher, please.
Yeah, I think one of the ways I think about this, in fact, it goes back to the Ranking Member Lucas talking about farming. When the United States started industrializing, one of the things we did as a country was rather dramatic. We made mandatory elementary school, right? And we decided that the population, to be able to adapt to this economy, needed to have basic literacy and math skills to be able to focus on that. I think the similar thing is happening. These knowledge-based economies, the good news is that the knowledge moves pretty well. And broadband and infrastructure and computing, I don't think the proximity to the few top, most R&D intensive universities is the only way that our society can benefit. But I don't know if people have the skills in basic digital literacy, those core competencies that they can productively and agilely work in that economy.
Great. And then final question, and I think this was Dr. Khan who mentioned that the industry university government synergy has kind of broken down, or was that you, Dr. Gallagher? That was you. Okay. So if you could, just describe some ways that we might be able to piece that back together. It strikes me that that's a critical component here.
Well, I think it's, the government has tended to fund the universities, so a lot of the mandate has gone on the universities for how can they be more relevant to industry. I think the uncracked code is, who's talking to industry about the partnership working the other way as well and creating some of those dynamics where, companies are working very hard on competing and working on pretty sensitive technologies can find a place where they can move upstream, take some of that higher risk but higher payoff, more fundamental work and work alongside the universities. That could be in consortia, other types of partnerships. I think asking the funding agencies to look at how that would work and how some of those cost-sharing arrangements could be incentivized. We've stimulated the amount of R&D spend by industry with the R&D tax credit and other things, but we haven't really tried to shape where some of those investments are, and I think that's an interesting policy arena.
Got it. Thank